Today's episode was recorded backstage at Paddlefest in St.Andrews, New Brunswick. I'd like to give a big thanks to their entire crew for letting us set up and record and for putting on an amazing festival. My guests today are father and son duo, Bill and Joel Plaskett. We sat down after their sound check and before their headlining set Sunday night. You can catch Joel again later this summer at Area 506 Festival in St. John, New Brunswick, playing with his band, the Joel Plaskett Emergency. That takes place from August 2nd to the 4th. Check it out at area506.ca. I really enjoyed talking to them, and I hope you enjoy it too. So please give it up for Bill and Joel Plaskett. So, I'm here with Joel Plaskett. I would say of Joel Plaskett Emergency, but it's just Joel Plaskett and Bill Plaskett this weekend.
Yeah, it's the two of us this weekend. Yeah. We've got an emergency show next week, actually, with the Memorial Cup back in Halifax.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Nice.
Yeah, we haven't played in a while. So
welcome back to Paddlefest.
Thank you. Good to be back.
That's exciting.
Yeah, man.
So how was your experience last time? That was 2 years ago, right?
I believe so. It gets blurry, so
Right.
If you're telling me it's 2 years ago, I believe you more than my own memory. My memory sure doesn't serve me as well. But yeah, no, it was great. We had a really good show here a couple of years ago. As we were driving into town, I was remembering all the streets that we walked down late at night.
Yeah.
Kind of coming back to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's perfect. Did that play a part in you coming back this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you know you've had a good time at a place or in a festival, then it makes it easier to say yes the next time. You know,
right.
But I mean, not that it's hard, but it was when we got the invite back. And I'm always kind of thrilled if we get the invite back to a festival like, and it's not 10 years later. It's just a couple. Then I feel like we must have done a good job.
Exactly.
Because usually they kind of rotate you on a longer rotation than that. So.
Well, the East Coast really welcomes you with open arms usually anyway. So.
Well, it's nice to hear, and it's a different show with my father. So
right.
Yeah.
So how has that been going?
Great. He may walk in here at some point. We just finished this sound check, which was running late, so he's probably trying to figure out where I am, but I figure probably he'll figure it out eventually.
Perfect. Yeah, so you guys, like I said, welcome with open arms in New Brunswick. You guys are playing Area 506 Festival later this summer?
Yep, yeah, that's another band play, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Emergency, right.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. I've never, that's a new festival, is it?
Fairly new.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know what year they're in? 3 years, I think, maybe?
Yeah, there's a bunch of good bands on that whole festival. So
yeah, well, they got Interpol coming.
Yeah,
which
I saw that.
Pretty exciting.
We played with Interpol in like 2000 or 2001. I don't know if it was their first London gig, but we were playing this club called the Barfly in Camden with the Emergency. We went over there in 2000, and Interpol were on the bill too. So they were just starting to get going as well. So
that's pretty cool.
I haven't seen them since.
So you'll see them there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So what we talk about a lot, the podcast is called Livin the Dream.
Yeah.
So that exemplifies your life, basically. Like you've been a musician since very young.
Yeah, be careful what you dream, you know? If you're dreaming,
So I guess, like you said, be careful what you dream. Is there a reason you say that?
No, I'm sort of joking. But I mean, it's more like, I honestly, I feel lucky to be doing what I'm doing. So yeah, I think, I guess the idea, I say it because I've been thinking a lot about the idea of like, I have a line in one of my new songs, if your dreams are coming true, be careful what you wish for.
Right.
But I've always wanted to play music, and I'm doing that. So I'm lucky, in that respect. And it's a real privilege to be able to do that. And I work hard at it, and I've been at it for a long time. So it doesn't come without its sacrifices, one of which is I'm away a lot. So it's challenging on the family front.
Yeah.
And my wife's very patient and believes in what I do, but we also have an 11-year-old son, and sometimes I feel like, the gig is usually somewhere else. There's only a few of them in Halifax, and then the rest of them are gone.
Right.
Yeah.
So you say you have an 11-year-old son. So is he playing any instruments at this age?
Flute.
Or?
He's playing the flute. I was at his concert the other night. He played Dance of the Jabberwocky.
Oh, nice.
Star Wars. And,
That's awesome.
And what was the other song? Oh, When the Saints Go Marching.
A classic.
Which actually sounded more in the grade 5 band like When the Saints Come Tumbling Out of the bar. But it was spirited. They were doing just fine, actually. They got a great music teacher who's here tonight, actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So.
Any plans to collaborate with him in the future?
My son? Yeah, actually, maybe. Yeah. If I can figure out, he's given me a really good title for a song. So I think if I can figure out some way to get him on the next record, I will. We haven't figured. He's pretty. He's not really playing instrument quite to the point where he can play something, but I feel like I can get him to sing or something.
Right.
3 generations might be kind of cool. Right?
That would be cool. We'll figure that
Plaskett
out.
trio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be good.
That'd be awesome.
Mandolin, we'll get him on the mandolin.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to touch on Thrush Hermit a little bit. I noticed that you guys have announced some dates later this year.
Yeah.
So, are you excited to kind of revisit Thrush Hermit? And
Yeah.
is there any plans to maybe write some new music or anything like that with the old band?
I don't think there's plans to write new music
No.
at this point, no. I mean, the idea is to celebrate and play the record Clayton Park,
Right.
which is 20 years old this
Yeah.
year. We knew that this year maybe we would try and get it out on vinyl, which just happened. And so we thought, maybe we'll do some shows and just have fun and get to hang out again for the first time in a long time with all 4 of us in the room.
Right.
I don't think any new stuff's in the cards. I mean, I don't rule anything out, but it's not something that we've discussed in any way. And really, by and large, it'll be a bit of we'll have our work cut out for us just remembering what we did. Now, we did do a reunion 10 years ago, so it's not like it's so far away. But
Right.
10 years is still a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So it'll be, but it's going to be a fun tour. Like the shows are all sold really well. A bunch of them are sold out. The West Coast ones just went on. Or the Western dates just went on.
They sold out pretty quick, I believe.
They sold out pretty quick.
Yeah.
So people are excited, which makes me excited. And we'll just it'll be celebratory for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing I found really interesting about Thrush Hermit, and I don't know how old you were when it happened. In '95, I believe you guys had a song, I think it was called Hated It, with Mallrats.
Yeah. That would have been even earlier than that came out. It might have been on that soundtrack in '95, but that'd be about '93 or '4.
Oh, wow.
Might be '94 or something.
So how old were you when that happened, and how was the feeling of that happening?
Getting it on the Mallrats soundtrack.
I mean,
it was cool. We didn't really, to be honest, so much was going on then we were like, oh, cool, it would be on the soundtrack. But that movie at the time,
Wasn't quite a cult
it's almost
classic.
like, it didn't have the cult following that it developed it later. So people are like, oh my gosh, you were on the Mallrats soundtrack. But at the time,
it was just
we were on a movie soundtrack.
Right.
I mean, and we had signed a publishing deal with an American with BMG.
in New York.
We didn't in New York, and
Right.
we didn't have a record deal yet at that point. Or Murder Records were putting out a record, Sloan's label, but we eventually signed with Elektra. But there's a lot going on, and so I don't think we realized how lucky we had it. To be honest,
really,
I think
in
that's sort of
hindsight.
maybe in hindsight. We were just young, and we just were kind of like, oh, cool, going with the flow. And we were excited for sure, but it wasn't necessarily, didn't seem like that big a deal. It would be now if it came my way.
You weren't as familiar with Kevin Smith or
Yeah,
Clerks and
it
things
was
like
all,
that.
everything was kind of new, and we were, I guess, just sort of,
Just young.
yeah,
and
we
going
were
with
just
the
young
flow.
and just sort of, sounds good.
Right.
And but we weren't really privy to all the moving and shaking that probably went on to actually get us there.
Right.
I think our manager at the time probably recognized it was more of a score than we did. We were sort of in our own little world. I shouldn't speak on behalf of anybody. I was in my own little world,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When I was telling people that I scored this interview with you, everyone was pretty excited, and a lot of people wanted me to ask you about Scrappy Happiness.
Okay.
And just kind of the scheduling for writing a song a week.
Oh, yeah.
With that album. Did you find that really helped creativity, just kind of forcing you to get into the zone, or did it, looking back, do you think maybe those songs could have used a little more time and attention?
Some of them could have used a bit more of attention, and some of them were started, and it's not like I didn't necessarily start every song from scratch from a writing point of view every week. Right. They were all recorded that week.
Yeah.
And so it was more about recording the songs and kind of I was trying to write knowing I had to do that. So I had bits and pieces, and some songs I finished kind of in the moment or that week, and other ones I were like, okay, I know this song, now we have to document it. It was as much about trying to put myself on a schedule of like having to get as close to a definitive version of something as I could.
Right.
And, you know, by and large, actually really quite, like I listened to that record for the first time in ages, not that long ago, and was kind of pleasantly surprised at how it held up. Like I feel like there's sonic stuff I would change and a few arrangement decisions. I don't think every mix on that record, and particularly the recordings got better as we went along.
Yep.
And so the first track we released, which is You're Mine, I don't love the mix of it. I really like the song a lot, but it's not my favorite recording. Like the snare drum sounds kind of like a cardboard box, you know. But we were kind of just setting up and figuring out what we could record in that space, and just fun. And then and old friends, and I like that a lot. But again, that mix was a bit challenging. But you know, by the end, Lightning Bolt I think sounds really good, and Ian McGettigan was involved in a couple of those tracks. Tough Love, I thought, sounded particularly good. There was a few tracks that really kind of nailed the mix on and the feel of. Time Flies was another one I like.
Yeah, it's definitely like a fan favorite, I believe. Like maybe like revisiting and remastering could be a
maybe,
future
yeah.
plan.
I mean, I'm not one to, you know, I've had people say you should remix Down at the Khyber or whatever. And I'm like, well, it sounds like when it was made. I don't really like mucking with things. I don't like the Led Zeppelin remasters. They drive me nuts. It pisses me off that Jimmy Page even bothered to muck with his awesome legacy. And you know, and they're my favorite band ever.
Right.
But I like my records that were probably printed in 1982 and aren't that different than the records that were printed in 1973.
It's a part of the art. Like
it's part of the art. It's that, like the sound. The sound of it is the sound of that era, and so the sound of Clayton Park is the sound of 1999 when we mastered and mixed it. And the same goes for, and so there's shortcomings, but really what is that? It's more like it's a moment in time. So, you know, I'm not adverse to changing things a little here and there, or remastering sometimes makes sense because if something was done really poorly at the time.
Right.
But by and large, I sort of like things for their idiosyncrasy and for whatever shortcomings, maybe sonically, that often becomes part of the personality of the record. So I find it kind of weird to go back and change that and bring it up to some sort of modern standard. And by and large, I don't like the sound of modern music.
Right.
I mean, there are some great sounding records, don't get me wrong, but the way records are made on computers and using sound replacement and all that.
Too much digital. And
lends itself to some styles of music, and you can make great things happen that way, but you can also make everything sound the same. I like it when things breathe and not every snare drum sounds exactly the same through the entire song. Then you know a drummer's hitting it, and they hit the rim shot, or they hit it a little harder. So there's a lot of modern techniques that don't really do.
Kind of shaves away the soul of the song.
Yeah, and they're often quite loud and compressed and all sorts of stuff. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, but that's just sort of, I've my own taste and place that I kind of reside as far as the way I like things to sound presented.
Yeah. Right. So growing up, I listened to a lot of Tragically Hip, as did most Canadian musicians or just Canadians in general. And I kind of first heard of you when you were touring with them back in, I believe, like 2004-ish.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about how, like, what that experience was like, just like being around Gord Downie? And I mean, he got up on stage with you guys and sang a song in 2005. Like, what was that experience like?
Hey, Dad. My dad's just joining us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Want to sit down, Dad? No, I'm just answering a question, and then there might be one for you.
Bill, nice to meet you.
Hello,
I'm Chris.
Chris, hi. How's it going?
And this is Jeff.
Good.
Jeff, right? Jeff?
Jeff.
That's right.
Yeah, I was just outside because I got distracted.
No worries. We just dove in and started. I figured you'd find us eventually.
Yeah, join us.
This is there's a camera here.
Yes. It's
I'll
only...
just keep my hat on.
Sure. You look good. Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us.
So I'm answering a quick question here for them, and then we'll just, you were asking me about Gord Downie and the hip.
Yes.
So that tour we are asked to open the Canada Day show for them, is what sort of led to the tour eventually, and we opened for them at the amphitheater in Toronto on Canada Day, and that went really well. And so then about 3 or 4 months later, or whatever it was, we got the call asking us if we wanted to do the national tour for them. So we must have done a decent job on that Canada Day show.
Right.
And it was Gord called me at home. which was awesome.
That is
It was
insane.
like, hey, you know, like I think that was before the Canada Day show or something. That was it was for the first gig or this. I can't remember if it was. Yeah, it was the first gig. So it was like, yeah. So we went and did it, and then we got the call to do the tour, and we went across the country with them, and it was amazing. Playing hockey arenas, you know, from Vancouver out,
Right.
and they were hauling our gear for us. We were following them in the Suburban. And they were taking our
Just
gear,
surreal.
we didn't have a trailer. We just all their gear went on the bus every night, and we'd show up. We'd have to tail them overnight, basically, because they were traveling on the tour bus. We were the trailer, basically. We were just, and so you could sleep in the back of the Suburban, you know, and we would just deadhead it after a gig to try and catch up to them, and then we'd show up usually while they were sound checking the next day or whatever, and our gear would be sort of in a corner, and then we'd set up every night, and their crew were awesome to us. Gord watched our show. All of them were like, a lot of them were watching the show every night.
Just genuinely interested.
Just genuinely like kind and interested, and
Right.
like took an interest in what we were doing, and gave us this opportunity. And like watching them every night was a real education in how to play to a large room.
Right.
Also, just wicked. You know, they were a great band.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we opened for them in the United States as well on a tour. When after we'd done Ashtray Rock, they took us through the States down to Austin and stuff, and we were playing kind of to their U.S. fans and all the expats down there. And that was even kind of cooler because we were watching them in smaller venues.
Yeah.
You know, they were like 500 to 2,000 seat venues as
Yeah.
opposed to hockey arenas. So yeah,
Where
we
you can
got a
really
real.
see
In
and
fact,
control
yeah,
the
there's a
crowd.
couple of really great memories. One really wild show, right at the Canada-U.S. border in the U.S. In this old cigarette factory on a Mohawk reservation, and it was like sponsored by a cigarette company or something, and so it was like everyone could smoke there. This was like well after, you know, and so it was just like this really wild show with everybody there, you know, all and it was just like this puff of smoke. It was chaos. It was great. So yeah, we had a lot of really good times with them, and they were so kind to us. Gord was an amazing person.
Was it on that tour or one of them where you played at the Metro Centre in Halifax?
Yeah,
as
that was
well?
at the end of the
That was at the end of the tour. Yeah, I know, and I was at that show in the bleachers,
Yeah.
and I've still got a photograph. There was a sort of a photo of you playing in the show, and I've still got it. I want to make a painting of it.
Yeah, that was one of the like we ended
so
kind
that
of
was
on the
that
East
was the
Coast.
final
I think it was
show.
that or Sydney was the last show of the tour, so
Right.
victory lap.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was good. Yeah,
That must have been a great feeling because, I mean, even just hearing about it is like kind of gives me chills, you know
Well,
what I
that's
mean?
nice to
Like,
hear. Yeah, no, it was. You know, again, like at the moment, I'm so used to working with my head down that trust me, it was an honor and it was a great thing. But we were sort of so wrapped up in just doing stuff that it was kind of like, I don't think I realized how lucky we were until later.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes is maybe it's something that I'm trying to recognize more. Is be more present and
Right.
kind of go, wow, this is cool when it's happening. Usually when things are happening, I'm kind of like stressing out that they're happening a little bit, like because I take it very seriously to
Right.
when we're playing and stuff, and so I don't think I quite could like celebrate that tour until it was done.
Right.
And even then, it was a few years later. I was like, that was wicked.
Well, you know what? The thing that I remember about that show, that last show, was that you came out swinging, if that's the phrase. You know, like
Right.
you came on and you just went right into it.
Yeah, well,
You
I
know
mean,
what
we
I
had
mean?
40 minutes in front of the hip,
Yeah.
and it was like,
Yeah.
whatever it was, 8 or 10,000 people.
Yeah.
It was like, that was what I realized I'd also heard these stories of like, change of heart given a hard time, or I'd read Dave Bedini's book about the rheostatics opening for them, and it was like, hip fans can be really hard, so I was like, really determined that we were going to like swing hard.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're
Exactly.
following, like, you're playing in front of like a really rabid fan base who all they want to do is hear the hip.
Yeah.
And so we were just like, I was just kind of like, and I think because we're a three-piece, lent itself to the words being heard, you know, and so I could
Right.
kind of, I was like, and that tour really taught me a lot about trying to reach out to the back of the room,
Yeah.
play to the room, and because we hadn't played venues that big to any great degree, you know, so it was really kind of it was a kind of not a lesson, but an opportunity to learn to do
Yeah.
something that we hadn't done before.
Which lends itself to your style of music, where the lyrics are so important to.
Yeah,
the
I don't
song
feel like an
itself.
arena band, and I'm not, right? We're not playing arenas, you
Right.
know? I like communicating words, and that tends to work in smaller venues, but I had to figure out how to do that in a hockey rink. And so that was sort of what was cool about it. And, you know, and whether anybody remember, but, you know, we made some fans on that tour. That really built the profile in Canada. And after that tour, we were selling out clubs across the country. And so it just, I mean, I owe them a lot. You know? Yeah.
How old were you at that time when you first jumped on with the hip?
Well, it was 2004, I think we did that.
Right.
And I would have been, so I was born in 75. So what does that make me?
Makes you
24. No, more than that, 29.
29, yeah.
No, hang on. I got it all wrong.
85, 95.
29. Almost 30. 29.
Almost 30, yeah.
29. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Four guys in here, and it took us that long.
we'll edit that. Yeah.
I think we got about 5 more minutes. I don't mean to be, sorry guys.
fine.
Yeah, because we got another
That is
interview we got to
perfect.
run to pretty soon. We got to eat.
Bill, you said you were at that show. How does it feel as a father seeing your son perform on such a big stage?
Well, I mean, that particular show was interesting too, because I mean, when Joel first started playing,
Right.
you know, in the days of, you know, Seattle East in Vancouver, in Halifax,
Well, that's
and
your
all of that, you know, I mean, I had to go because he was underage, and they were in Thrasher,
Right.
they were playing in the bars, so I would be the chaperone, you know.
Bandad,
So
yeah.
I saw Joel play a lot, but it was always in small places, right?
Yeah.
And well, I mean, any place that I saw Thrush Hermit play was basically in bars in Halifax.
Yeah, we were a bar.
And so really, I suppose that was the first big arena show that I saw you playing in once, you know, Thrush Hermit quit and all of that. And so, I mean, for me, as I said, he came out swinging, and I thought, wow, you know. I
Well,
mean,
we had just finished 20 shows with
well,
him.
that's what I mean, you know.
So you're
and
fresh.
so
Yeah.
there was something really polished about the performance. You know, it was intentional,
Yeah.
and it was focused, and you could hear every word. You
Right.
know, and so I guess to answer your question, that was the first time I saw him and the band, you know, playing in a big arena to a big crowd.
Right.
You know, with a lot of sort of presence in the atmosphere because the hip was there
Yeah.
too, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah.
So now collaborating with him and touring with him and playing music with him, as a father, like I already asked him, like as a son, how does it feel? But as a father, how does it feel to be touring with your son?
Well, there's all kinds of ways. I mean, it's interesting.
Right.
It's because I like to play, you know, and so I get to play. This is a real opportunity for me to play and to, you know, we've learned, we've worked out songs together, so there's satisfaction in all of that, you know. I mean, how does it feel? I mean, I'm proud of him, you know, and I get that. I have no compunction in saying that, and I get asked that a lot. You must be proud. Of course I am, you know.
Right.
But I also see how much work it is, in a way, you know, and how much focus it takes, and how much improvisation it takes, you know, how much what do I say? You know, there's all kinds of things that can go wrong and decisions that have to be made quickly.
Well,
So
yeah.
I see all that kind of stuff, you know.
Behind the
I mean,
scenes.
and I participate in it, but I don't have to decide anything.
Well,
you know,
I mean,
except just
yeah,
to
I
be
mean,
there.
part of it is, I mean, I think what's interesting about Dad and I playing is like, Dad's a social musician, or has been, like,
Yeah.
kind of not entirely casual, but it was been in social circumstances that you played a lot, whereas for me, it's been professional for a long time.
Right.
And the social aspect of it has almost kind of diminished because I'm taking the stage for a living, and I'm not one to sit down and necessarily play in a social capacity all that much. This brings a little bit of the two worlds together, but at the same time, it is like, it's a delicate balance. The thing I like about gigging and what's fun about playing in different ways, both with my band and with you, and sometimes on my own, is like having to figure out what kind of show would work, but also, what you fine tune and try and make professional, and what you let breathe and just leave to the moment and not sweat. And so how rehearsed do you want to get? You want to get rehearsed enough? You know, maybe you can never be too rehearsed, but I actually like it. I like a lot of what I remember about other shows or things are often the moments that seemed like things are about to fall apart, and then
Right.
or something, or a joke that got made that was inherent to the evening, you know,
Right.
that it was you know, and so, because if it gets too scripted, it becomes kind of a bit robotic, and so,
Right.
you know,
Especially for the live aspect, like.
fortunately, neither of us have the attention to detail or the memory to be able to like execute it identically every night, you know,
Right.
so, yeah.
One last question before I let you guys go.
Yep.
Do you still have the Joel belt buckle?
Somewhere in
Where
a
did you
drawer,
get it?
in a drawer somewhere. My wife Rebecca, my girlfriend at the time years ago, but
Right.
we're married now. But she gave me that as one of my early birthday presents of, you know, when after we first started dating, like probably 94 or something.
Right.
She found that and gave it to me at 95 or something. And so I've got it in a drawer somewhere. I might crack
You
it out
should.
for the Thresher tour, you know, just.
That would be perfect.
Yeah, yeah. There was something hilarious. Yeah, it was funny. I don't know where I had it. Yeah, she found it in a Western tack shop some years
Right.
ago or something.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for
Thanks a lot.
being with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Living the dream.